Welcome back and welcome to another movie reviews video. I make movie reviews here on this channel every Sunday. They are always spoiler free and I leave timestamps in the description box below so that you can scroll to the particular movie you would like to hear my thoughts on. I will also leave last week's movie reviews linked up here in case I saw something last week that you are considering seeing this week, and at some point I will also leave the video that I uploaded on Thursday, which talks about how in 2019 we watched every movie on the IMDb top 100 list and what we thought of that. So I will leave that linked up there at some point. I saw 3 movies in cinemas this week. The first of those was Uncut Gems, which I had been trying to see. It was really difficult at the end of December just trying to fit in movies, so the first 2 movies this week, well, all 3 movies this week I've been like really wanting to see for ages. So Uncut Gems stars Adam Sandler as a kind of wheeler dealer, jeweler, slightly slippery character in New York who seems to have a bit of a gambling problem, and is to do with this uncut opal that he has and this bet that he places on a major basketball game. I think it was the Boston Celtics, and sort of the betting that he does with that, and this particular opal that he has to sell is quite a violent film. It's a very stressful film. I'd heard amazing things about it. I was really excited about seeing it, but even before hearing the amazing things about it, I was really excited by the trailer. I was excited to see the film. It looked like my kind of thing, but it was very, very stressful film. There is a lot of jumping around. There is a lot of flashing lights. Obviously the kind of jewelers that he goes into are all really, really bright, and then sometimes we see scenes take place at night, but a lot of the time we see him in the day, so it's just a very, very bright film. And he is a kind of larger than life character, so it's very kind of loud, lots of talking, lots of moving around. So if that is something that bothers you, I wouldn't recommend this film for you. I have to say, I've been hearing like really, really amazing things about this film, and I was a little bit disappointed. I came out of it going, that was kind of less than what I was expecting. And that's not just because people have been saying this film's awesome and this film's doing amazing things, but because I was excited to see it from the trailer. So it did kind of let me down, and this is probably one that I would recommend waiting and watching however you get your movies at home, whether that's streaming or DVD, borrowing them from the library. Then the second film I saw in cinemas this week I think it came out the same time as Uncut Gems. It might have come out the week before, but again, it was one of these that I'd seen the trailer for, and I'd not heard as much about this film, as much about people going to see this film. And this film is Richard Jewell, and this surrounds Richard Jewell, who was a real person working security at Olympic Park in Atlanta in '96. And is that when the Atlanta, yes, 92 was Greece, 96 was Atlanta, yes. And there's a bomb that goes off, and Richard Jewell is the person that discovers the bomb because he's working security there, but then he becomes the person of interest from the FBI. And it follows his whole journey. It has John Hamm in it, and I love John Hamm in everything that he's in. I just really, really enjoy watching him on the screen. Kathy Bates is in it, and she has a lot of emotional scenes. She was awesome in it. And Sam Rockwell was also in it, who he just seems to lend his hand to all these different characters. I haven't watched Fosse Verdon yet. It's been on my watch list on Hulu for a little while, but I'm excited to watch that one because obviously he got nominated for Golden Globe for it as well. So he just seems to be a bit of a chameleon and can kind of jump around a little bit. Again, this was a little bit stressful to watch, but in a different way to Uncut Gems. It wasn't stressful because of what was going on the screen. It was stressful because of the stress that the character was being put under. And I enjoyed this so much more than Uncut Gems. I saw Uncut Gems on Tuesday and saw this on Wednesday. And I don't regret seeing Uncut Gems, but I wish I'd kind of made the choice to see the other film first, because this was kind of my return to cinema viewing in the week. And yeah, this one had a lot going on. It was very emotional. I cried a bit. I got quite angry. And it was quite a heartwarming film in a lot of ways as well. It's one of those kind of slightly underdog stories. However, unfortunately, my cinema had a lot of very badly behaved people in it, and so I kind of missed the ending. So I do need to look up what happened sort of at the very end of the film, because it got very quiet at the very end of the film, and my cinema audience got very noisy at the very end of the film, because, you know, why wouldn't you at 12:45 in the middle of the day on a Wednesday be as noisy as possible? I was the only person in that cinema without a cough as well, which, you know, people can't help having a cough, but when it gets to a certain point, you take it outside. Anyway, that's beside the point. I may go and see this film again. Is it one you definitely have to see in the cinema? Not necessarily. It may get an Oscar nod. Kathy Bates was nominated for a Golden Globe. Sam Rockwell wasn't nominated for this, but he is a bit of an Oscar darling. So if you're wanting to see it in the run-up to the Oscars, obviously the announcements are tomorrow morning, then it's not a waste of a cinema ticket, because I thought it was a good film. It was enjoyable. If you're not interested because you want to see an award winner necessarily, or an award nominee, should I say, then yeah, this isn't necessarily one which has to be seen on the big screen. The cinematography is good, but there's nothing spectacular. I mean, if you like your John Hamm doses of the big screen variety, recommend this one. It's a pleasing dose of John Hamm. And then the third film I saw in cinemas this week, finally, was Little Women. I think I said last week I was going to see this on Wednesday. Ended up seeing it on Friday. Knew I was going to see it before filming this video, one way or another. And it was just very pleasant and something that I would watch again. I am a massive fan of the Winona Ryder, Susan Sarandon version of Little Women. And it is one of my kind of comfort films. Obviously in 2018, I think, or the end of 2017, they brought out a remake of it and it completely flopped. I think it must have been 2018, because I didn't even manage to catch it at the cinema, and that's saying something. Like, you know, I can go to cinema at a lot of different times of day, and I didn't manage to catch this other version of Little Women. So it completely flopped. So it kind of surprised me when they said they were coming out with a new one. But when I saw that Saoirse Ronan and Greta Gerwig were attached to it, I was like, okay, I can kind of see why. Obviously, yeah, this has some massive names attached to it. We've got Meryl Streep, we've got Laura Dern. I spent the whole film going, oh, I know Florence Pugh, but I don't know why I know Florence Pugh. And it's because she's in Fighting With My Family, which was one of my favourite films of last year. And just watching this made me go, I want to watch Fighting With My Family again. I'm ready for that journey again. I think that would be lovely. And of course, Rob Brydon. No, not Rob Brydon's in that one. Who is in that one? Mark. I forget his second name. Anyway, aside. Yeah, because there have been so many remakes, and because so many people love that Winona Ryder version, this remake was going to have to have done something different. Obviously, yes, there are all these big names attached to it, and Greta Gerwig is attached to it, who's awesome. Loved Lady Bird. And what they've done differently is they've played with the timeline a little bit, which I really don't mind at all. I love books that play around with the timeline and have sort of dual narrative things going on, or multiple timelines going on. However, it does mean that they assume that you have some sort of knowledge of the storyline. So if you have no knowledge, you've never read the book or seen one of the other versions of Little Women, I think that perhaps you might be a little confused as to what's going on in the movie to begin with. Once you get into it a little bit more and you've worked out who everybody is, and that we've got the adult timeline and we've got the childhood timeline, then I think you'll be okay. But initially, if you don't have any prior knowledge of the book or who these March sisters are, then it might be a little bit confusing. That's the only thing I'll say about the timeline. I have prior knowledge. I love the other film. I've attempted to read the book and give it up. I know, terrible. I would call myself a booktuber. I thought that the casting was very good. It's interesting because in the previous film, I feel like it's a bit more balanced between each of the four sisters, even though we kind of know Jo is more of kind of the main character, so to speak. It's more about the sisters and the sisters themselves. Whereas I feel like in this film, Amy and Jo are our main characters. They're our main focus. I feel like we don't have a whole lot of focus on Beth at all. And obviously she has the kind of the sad storyline, the part that really pulls at your heartstrings. And I think that that's done really well in the other film. I don't mind that we didn't have as many sort of, oh, poor Beth scenes in this one. And we have a couple of joyful scenes with her and her piano and her and the old man next door, which I like. I like the fact that Beth was given a slightly more, joyful part of the story, and then her sad bits are very much isolated bits quite near the end of the film, which is okay by me. Meg, I feel like kind of got off a bit rougher because I feel like she was kind of in scenes a little bit more just to be an accessory to somebody else. So we have a bit of romance for her and a bit of kind of growing up for her in the storyline as a whole. And yeah, I feel like those were kind of glossed over a little bit. I don't feel like I really got to know Meg in this film. And then Jo's storyline, I feel like in the previous, well, not the most recent version, but the previous version of Little Women, it's a lot more about Jo's relationship with Laurie or Teddy, and also her relationship with Friedrich, whereas this one I feel like Jo got to be more independent, and it was about her relationship with herself a lot more, which again I'm not complaining about. And I feel like, yeah, they really definitely had to do something different, otherwise it would be just another remake of Little Women. It wouldn't be anything special, it wouldn't be anything standout. And I like the fact that it is a slightly more introspective version. I like what they've done with the original book and taken it and kind of given it, pushed more on the messages that will be better received today. I think, looking at self-identity and looking at what we can do when we're kind to one another, and looking at what women can do, and independent women as well, and that is something that definitely was there in the book, but I feel like the emphasis has been switched to that in the film, rather than to the, oh, who's this character going to marry and who's this character going to marry and what's happening with this relationship. And I like that. Is it something that you have to see on the big screen? I would say that this one does benefit from being on the big screen. The cinematography, I was watching some interviews afterwards, and they've made some definite choices about the way they have a sort of golden lighting. They used a specific filter on the childhood scenes to give it that golden glow of childhood, and so I think that you really get that on the big screen, whereas you wouldn't necessarily get that on the small screen. but I can definitely see this as being one that I would watch on my sofa with a blanket, because it's very comforting, and it did, a lot of the scenes, because where it's set, did make me feel cold a lot of the time, because it's set in kind of slightly damp and chilly Massachusetts, or damp and chilly New York City at the time of the Civil War. So yeah, so don't go to this one if you go to cinema wearing just a t-shirt. You know, have some layers, because it's going to be chilly. It's going to make you feel cold. Okay, there you have it, my movie reviews for this week. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up. Make sure you are subscribed so that next week's movie reviews video lands in your subscription feed. Alternatively, I have bookish content for you coming up in the week. If there is a particular movie you would like to hear my thoughts on, let me know in the comments. I am always happy to go and watch and bring my thoughts back here to you next week. I'm looking forward to the Oscar nominations tomorrow. I will see you with another video in the week, or more movie reviews next Sunday. Thanks for watching.